It's often said that the line between love and hate is a fine one, and many of us find ourselves navigating it daily, whether with friends, family, or coworkers. How many times have you thought, I can't believe I ever liked that person? Or my personal favorite, I hate that guy. Then, there are those who preach endlessly about the human condition or urge you to stop being so hateful. They'll tell you to show more humanity. As for me, I focus on my condition and my family's well-being. Having friends is great, but let's be real, you can only trust most people as far as you can see them. In my case, not all friends or family were as loyal as I'd hoped. It was a tough lesson, but it taught me one important thing, who my true family and friends really were. My name is Pace Jensen. I'm 29 years old, a former soccer player, and a passionate runner. I'm married to Amy, a beautiful woman with a fiery personality. The highlight of my life? Being a father to 3 amazing little boys. At the time everything fell apart, Amy and I had been married for 7 years. We'd started our family quickly because, truthfully, I couldn't get enough of her. I lived and breathed Amy. And that's where my downfall began. We exchanged our vows the day after graduating from college. We were both UMass alumni. Amy majored in secondary education, and I studied management information systems. She landed a teaching job at an elite private school in Dallas, while I started working at Empire Funding. Life was off to a promising start. Sure, we had ups and downs, like any couple, but nothing major. I still remember our first argument. It was over my dream car, a 1968 Shelby Cobra GT 500. A candy apple red, 2-door fastback with white racing stripes and a roaring 302 cubic inch V8 engine. Unlike most people, I could actually afford a $100,000 car, but Amy thought it was impractical. Still, we moved past that. We had a good life, living close to my family, which I thought was a blessing. My parents were in their 50s, and I had a younger brother, Rob, who was 17. Rob attended the same high school where Amy taught and even had her as his teacher. Despite the 12-year age gap, we were as close as brothers could be. That said, I often had to make sacrifices for Rob. It was just how my family operated. My dad would always say, "Be a hero, son. Make the sacrifice, it'll make you a better person in the end." Over time, I learned to let those words go in one ear and out the other. My best friend, Jeffrey Parks, was another bright spot in my life. He was the brother I wished I had. We'd been inseparable since 3rd grade. Jeff was a lawyer, and I counted on him to have my back, especially in legal matters. Last Monday, I got home to find Amy had taken the boys to her sister's house, just 4 doors down. I figured we'd have the house to ourselves and was looking forward to some alone time. But Amy had something on her mind. When she told me she was pregnant, I was ecstatic. I couldn't wait to spoil my future daughter, though Amy seemed distant, with a troubled expression I couldn't ignore. "Pace, it's not your baby," she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. Stunned, I asked her to explain. Instead of answering, she called someone. Moments later, my mom, dad, and Rob arrived at our house. That's when Rob stepped forward and dropped the bombshell. "Pace, Amy is in love with me, and the baby is mine." It felt like a bad joke. But no one laughed. My father chimed in, asking me to be the bigger man and make sacrifices for the family. My mom echoed the sentiment, pleading for me to be the hero and keep the family intact. In that moment, I realized I hated them all. My wife, my brother, even my parents. The fine line between love and hate had been crossed. But the nightmare wasn't over. When I went to pick up my boys from Amy's sister's house, a sheriff was waiting for me. He informed me I couldn't see my kids until a custody decision was made. I felt the anger and hatred boiling inside me as I realized just how far the betrayal had gone. For now, I was left with nothing but my own home, where I planned my next steps in this devastating new reality. As I turned back toward my home, my father caught my hand. "Pace, son, listen to me," he said. "Don't do anything you'll end up regretting later." I glared at him and said, "Don't ever call me son again. Take your hand off me unless you want to regret it for the rest of your life. Leave me alone, all of you backstabbing," I cut off, then turned to Amy. "If I were you, I'd hire the best lawyer you can find because, trust me, you're going to need one. Enjoy the kids while you can, but now, get out of here. Take all of this with you." As I began to walk away, Rob suddenly shot at me, landing a punch on the right side of my face. Before I could dodge out of the way, my father grabbed hold of me, and Rob struck me again. Luckily for me, Rob's punches hit like a child's, or I might have been in real trouble. The sheriff leapt off the porch, sprinted toward us, and tackled Rob to the ground. I managed to break free of my father's grip and retaliated by punching him square in the mouth. He fell to the ground, utterly shocked. He could never have imagined that Pace, his sensible kid, could unleash such anger. When the scuffle ended, both Rob and my father were arrested for assault. But I had no idea that the real chaos was still to come. A couple days later I got a call from the assistant district attorney, asking me to testify. In doing so I just casually mentioned that it all started when my 29-year-old wife of 7 even years was pregnant by my 17-year-old brother. I also said that the brother went to 12th grade at the same school that Amy taught. They seemed to show some interest in this information. 2 days later I went to meet with the only person I could rely on, Jeffrey Parkson, attorney. I arrived at his office in high spirits. It turned out to be another trip in treachery down the Pace-Jensen freeway. While waiting for him to finish, he came out with his new client. Amy looked over, saw me, and smirked. I looked at Jeff and said, "Better Jeff, you'd better do it with me." Jeffrey Parks turned and walked away. That's how it was arranged so quickly. Jeff was their man. He knew how I would react and cut me short. I never thought she'd do something like that. I'll always wonder why he decided to follow her, but then you know what, who cares about his reasons, because once he said yes, he no longer existed. For me, to hell with them. I had to laugh again, but there was a difference. It was just another reason to keep crossing the line. I was becoming a different person. Hate can do that to you. I turned to a lawyer of a different sort, Stevie Crust. Stevie was known as an ulcer. His motto was, "If you have money, go for it." He was about to close his office when I found him. I asked him if he wanted to get involved in a case that would soon receive national publicity. He saw the dollar signs, unlocked his door, and we walked in. I wrote him a check for $10,000. I told him that sooner or later he would have to bail me out. He told me he couldn't participate in anything illegal. I told him my plans. He laughed so hard he spit out his gum. I went home. When I got there was a sheriff's deputy sitting in the driveway. He got out of his car and asked who I was. I showed him my ID. He gave me an envelope and said, "You have been served." I walked in and threw the papers in the trash can. I didn't even look at them. Then I made some calls, had a snack, and went to bed. Tomorrow would be a new day. After a good night's sleep I brushed my teeth, rinsed my mouth, and combed my hair. After all, I need to look my best. As soon as I walk out the door to grab the paper, bam, they pounce on me. "Mr. Jensen, is it true that your wife is a teacher and pregnant by your underage brother?" One reporter asked. Then another asked what school she teaches at. Another asked why she was still out. I said I don't know who should be doing this. From that point on, life became hell for everyone involved in this sad case. Reporters were posted outside Amy's school, my parents' house, Jeff's office, And Amy's sister's house Jeff liked. Publicity, but not like this when Amy and my former parents first approached Jeff. He was under the impression that Rob was at least 18, not 17. The next thing pissed Jeff off even. And more it was when his office was picketed by a group of family rights activists. One of the protesters doused him with cow urine. The next morning I appeared on the Nancy Grace show. She called Amy anything but a child of God. If any of you watch the Nancy Grace TV show, you know that once she gets the story, she is like a dog with a bone from the first moment to the end of the story. New York's reporting was all about Amy and her merry band of misfits. Hi everyone, a child molester is walking free on our streets and pregnant by an impressionable young man. And where's the Nancy yelled. I taped the show. I looked pretty dapper, I think so myself. But the camera does add 10 pounds 2 days later. Amy was arrested for sex with a minor, breach of public trust, and rape. Rob was removed from his parents' custody and sent to juvie. They eventually learned that he had to stay there until he turned 18. A month later I was sitting in a courtroom across from Amy and my former family. She was represented by an who used to be my friend. The only person I felt sorry for was my mom. She just sat there looking sad. It was heartbreaking, but such is life. Amy and Mrs. Jensen had called me hundreds of times over the past month asking if I would sit down and talk to them before things went too far. I asked Amy one question. Did you sit down and talk to me before you slept with my brother? She didn't answer, so there was no point in talking. After Amy was arrested, my children were returned to me at a quick custody hearing. The judge awarded me full custody, child support in the house, which was already in my name. As the criminal trial approached, I was scheduled to testify. I wanted to make sure that did a long time in jail, but that was not to be. Amy never went to trial. She took a plea bargain and got 3 and 2 years. In her statement at sentencing, she apologized to me. I almost felt sorry for her. Her life was ruined. Her teaching career was over, and for better or worse. She would have to register as a sex offender for the rest of her life. 4 years have passed since then. I took the kids and moved 2,000 miles away. Now that our family consisted of 7 people, my 3 sons and Amy's little daughters, we were a smaller version of the Brady family. I know the BTB crowd is going to call me a wuss, and you know what, they'd be dead wrong. You think I'm stupid enough to stay with any who sleeps with my former little brother? Hell no. My wife's name is spelled Amy. I met her 4 months after we moved, and Amy is a motorcycle cop, and the day she wrote me a ticket changed my life. When she got back to her motorcycle, all it took was one look at her ass, and I knew she was going to be my next wife. I had to beg a little, but once I got her into bed, it was the greatest day of my life. Did I mention she has her own handcuffs? I love her to death, but it took her a long time to overcome my distrust. Amy has faced a lot of over the years, and she's been through just as much. She's just like me. She doesn't trust. She tests me the same way I test her, and it works for us, but most of all I like the hell out of her in bed. So far really nice. Amy